All right. Next up is Brad Stanton, and always good to hear from Brad. He said, wants to know if you believe the Spinebuster at WrestleMania 17 was the biggest pop of your career.
Was that with The Undertaker?
Yes. Yes.
For sure.
All right. There you go.
There's not a lot of instances that Undertaker was put in that as a fan, I was looking at that and I went, damn, he's going to get beat. That's it. Because he's the Undertaker, and he kicks out of everything, and as well he should. But that was painted so craftily. I think that's a word, craftily. It was done so well with me being able to just appear, as it seemed, and it was so well done. I think when I rolled out, and those people, when I rolled out of the ring, the pop was still going. They thought that was it. Ric Flair and Arn Anderson are going to beat The Undertaker. And that's what made it so good for me. It was like a sustained, holy shit, no, they're actually going to pull this off. And you don't see that very often with The Undertaker.
No. It's funny because the very next question that we have from somebody is Jeremy Priest, and his question is exactly about that specific event again. He asks, on a scale of 1 to 10, how jacked were you when you drove Undertaker's ass to the mat? Reason I'm asking is because I just rewatched it and I loved it, and I was just curious. How just pumped and jacked were you when that happened?
You have no idea. It's as good as it gets. The event was as good as it gets. The opponent was as good as it gets. The reaction from the fans was as good as it gets. And it was just, it's one of those surreal moments that everybody that's been in the business and paid their dues and has worked hard and protected the business and, you know, and missed out on all the things. I look at that as a reward for all those birthdays I missed, all those, you know, events I didn't get to go to, senior night, my son out on the football field, you know, his mom having to go out with him instead of his dad, and all those things that we missed. That was kind of a reward because that's why I do it. I don't know why other guys do it, but if you stay in the business even 10 years, 8 to 10 years, you had a hell of a career. 40 years I'm still in. And at that point in time, I was probably, I don't know, 15 years in, 18, 20, yeah. maybe 20 years in. And I looked at it, you know, there's a feeling that it's unlike any other. I mean, you go to the ring with a maestro stick and you wave it, and people do what you're directing them to do. And that was big time, times 10, and something you'll never forget.
All right. Well, listen, Drew Landry is up next. He says he has a couple questions for you. From what I understand, which could be wrong, if guys were programmed to wrestle in a big event, they would wrestle against each other at house shows and live events. To the best of your knowledge, is that still happening? If not, why? And do you think something like that should return?
I'm sure it's happening with WWE. They like to have dry runs, which I think are good and bad. You know, if you're one of those people that saw that match, and then let's just say they were 150 miles away the next day, and you went and you saw it again, and maybe 2 weeks later they were 200 miles away, and you drove and you saw that same match. That's just making the loop, getting ready for a pay-per-view or a big show. Now you've seen it 3 times. It's not going to have the luster as if you're seeing it for the first time. And that's the reality. But with guys that have limited experience, have not been wrestling that long, and asking our fans to pay a certain price, you know, for a pay-per-view event, you want it to be as good as you can. So that's the reason for giving the dress rehearsals. It's not an issue with AEW because there's no house shows. Everything is pretty much a you're running into a one-off.
Yeah, and I think though, and you said guys with experience, but if you had, at least for the guys and gals that maybe don't have as much experience nowadays, and there's not that house show option, sometimes when they're pushed straight to TV, you're like, oh man, if those two, talents could have worked together at a few house shows together or had the opportunity for some of that, it could have come off so much better. And I think that, at live events and things like that, that was kind of a perk to it in preparation for a pay-per-view or for a TV show, having had that familiarity and having worked those spots maybe a few different ways and, know where they could go. And I don't know, I feel like in some cases on TV now where the big term is botch, you have some of that because there's not a lot of that house show kind of practice, if you will. And I hate to say that word.
Well, it's unfamiliarity. You don't get to go in and test it out. And it's a double-edged sword. I'm not going to be a guy that says start adding a bunch of house shows because, to be honest with you, I'm enjoying the schedule.
Absolutely, I get it.
And I'm a little selfish about that. But guys work out things to during, whether it's during the day or even sitting in the locker room talking about stuff. And some, I guess, make arrangements to go somewhere on their off days and get together a time for two. There's ways to do it if you truly want to be the best at what you do. That's up to you. That's up to you. It's up to your wanting to sacrifice your free time to make it as good as you can.
And I love that approach because it's always like, hey, well, here's the problem. Okay, well, then here's the solution. So since there's not, let's get into the gym ourselves. Or, hey, I'll see you there on a Saturday and let's go through it. And let's practice, get our hands on each other. So